Hey y'all, Jeff Nowak, NOLA.com's digital sports producer here, about a half hour ahead of Saints-49ers for a quick pregame live chat. If y'all have any questions, comments, whatever, anything you want me to address, throw it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through some key points before what should be a relatively safe and easy game for the Saints. But, whenever the 49ers show up in town, there's a big question. And based on what happened last year, it would be smart to not underestimate a team even with basically no one on it that you're going to remember from that matchup last year. I mean, the most notable player in that game that you're going to see this time around is probably Emmanuel Sanders, and he's on the Saints now. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what happens. I think the Saints are going to. This kind of reminds me of the game a few years ago, where if last week was the Eagles game from 2018, this week feels like it's going to be the Bengals game. If you remember, they romped the Bengals so badly. That one was actually at home or on the road for the I'm sorry, that one was in Cincinnati, and the Saints beat them up so bad that the Bengals mascot was on the sideline banging his head on the ground. And that's what this feels like. This is just not the time of the season that the Saints put up a dud against a bad team. The Falcons game last year notwithstanding, but that was a division matchup, and those are always difficult. And I would argue that the Falcons last year were not a bad team. They just played badly. And in that game, they didn't. But we're just going to go through a few things really quick. As you can see on the screen there, Quan Alexander, number 58, he is alive and active. It's quite a thing when you get traded and then your first game with your new team is 13 days later against the team that traded you. But that is 2020 in a nutshell. He's going to be out there. It's tough to know how much he's going to play, how active he's going to be. But, it's just depth at that position. The Saints have performed admirably at the linebacker position, despite really not having much depth at all. They run a lot of sub packages. They only run two linebackers out there on most plays. It's usually some combination of Anzalone, Demario Davis, and then whatever else they go with that week. Now you have a guy who you trust to really work in, that you can get up the field and pressure. You trust him to make tackles. You trust him to be in the right position, doing what you need him to throughout the game. So that's a good thing to have, and we'll just see. I mean, he's been hurt a lot of the last 2 years, so hopefully he can stay healthy. The Saints only have just one injury scratch this week, and it is Dwayne Washington. So for a team that has been just monumentally hurt all season long, they're finally healthy and coming off of a huge win last week. And I think you'll see a team build on that today. The 49ers, it's tough to know what to expect. I mean, even by the standards of them losing players, they're actually even worse than you think, because they don't have Jimmy Garoppolo, they don't have George Kittle, they don't have Tevin Coleman or Raheem Mostert. They don't have Richard Sherman. They don't have Nick Bosa. And I mean, there are players, you're going to hear players' names today that you have never heard of. Richie James had a huge game last week, catching passes from Nick Mullins. That was not a thing you could have heard last year. I mean, Nick Mullins was on the team. I don't know where Richie James was, but he wasn't catching passes. You're going to see Jerick McKinnon is actually a name you have heard before, but he's been hurt for seemingly a decade at this point, and he's finally back in, so it's good to see. But he's not the guy you expected out of that backfield. Raheem Mostert had a huge season last year. He had a huge start to the season, but he's on IR. Tevin Coleman's hurt too, so you're just gonna have to see what happens. These games are always tough for the Saints in the secondary, because the way they operate is really oriented to winning big games and winning those tight matchups with Mike Evans, with Devontae Adams. And I think if you go back to the Packers game, you see they struggled in that game. And a big part of that struggle was Marshawn Lattimore is at his best when you can just clamp him on to a number one receiver and let him shadow him across the field. He is a shadow player. He gets up for those matchups. And he doesn't play quite as well when you have to throw him in multiple situations across the field, and he kind of doesn't know who he's targeting until the play starts. And that's that's just not the optimal way to use him. And the 49ers might benefit from that a little bit. I just don't think they have enough firepower to really make this hurt for the Giants. I just don't. The Giants. The Giants is the game going on in the background. Obviously, I meant the Saints. But it's going to be, all season long you've been saying, oh man, if only the Saints could get their star players back, they might win games easily instead of having to scrape out seemingly everything going into overtime against the Bears and against against the Chargers, surviving that field goal attempt by the Panthers. I mean, it's just every game up until last week had just been like, grit your teeth and see if they can hold on through the whole roller coaster. And they did. They've won 5 in a row, and that's pretty remarkable considering what you've seen go on for them. Let's see. Deebo Samuel also not in there for the 49ers. Even the guys who just showed up and you're like, oh, these guys are pretty good. Maybe they'll get a chance now to really show off. They're not there. So it's tough. While I'm thinking about it, throw your score predictions in the chat. I'll let you guys throw yours in there first before I give you mine. And while y'all drop those in there, I will go through some questions, some comments, and see what y'all think. George Pertuit has an early one, which if Saints don't win this by 50, I'll be shocked. They should win this game easily. This is a game they in the past have won easily. It's not. This is a trap game, if you want to call it a trap game, but the Saints don't seem to fall into those traps. They just have too much of a veteran presence. It seems like last year against the Colts was the just stereotypical, okay, this is a game you could see them really come out flat in because everyone's talking about the record, everyone's talking about this and this and this, and they just came out and just flat out dominated the Colts. Breeze completed like 94% of his passes. He had 1 incompletion the entire night. And that's how this game feels. It really doesn't feel like the type of game that you're like, oh, the Saints are just going to overlook the 49ers. What are they overlooking them for? They know every game is going to be a grinded out game. They know every game is going to be critical in winning the NFC South and critical in getting the 1 seed. They're not going to overlook this team in this game. Last year they went into the 49ers matchup in week 14 with 2 losses. This year they go into it with 2 losses. And I think you're going to see a better performance from the defense than you saw in that game because the 49ers just don't have offensive weapons in this matchup. They just don't. They have a guy named Trent Taylor who I believe is starting. They have a running back named Jermichael Hasty who I believe is starting, either him or Jerick McKinnon. So you're going to see that. You're going to see that come to light when this game starts to get going. I mean, I agree with this. You don't want to go into it with overconfident, but this Saints team, especially the construction they've had the last few years, has really shown the ability to put teams that are significantly beneath them from a talent perspective in the rearview mirror quickly. And I don't think that today is going to be any different. Jerry Cook goes off today. We have a couple of people who think Jerry Cook's going to have a big game. Let's see. There was another one. Okay, yeah. Oh, it's the same guy. Yeah, Jeff thinks Cook's going to have 3 TDs. He could. I mean, I think the basis for this is because last year he came in and he had 2 quick touchdowns and then got hurt and got knocked out of that game. That's very possible that he does go off, that he just feels comfortable looking at those red jerseys across from him. I don't think he's going to have 3 touchdowns. I think he will have a big game. I think this is a game where the Saints really try to get him involved. He's had a slow start to this season, but he is the guy who I think will benefit the most from Michael Thomas being back, just because of the attention that Michael Thomas draws on those underneath routes. I did a film study looking at the over under high low shallow cross concepts that they used last week. You can check it out on our YouTube page. It's New Orleans Saints at NOLA.com, and I kind of broke down the difference in how the Bucs had to play that with Michael Thomas that they didn't earlier in the season when you had guys like Traquan Smith, Adam Troutman running those routes, and all of a sudden the defense isn't able to sink at the linebacker level nearly as deep as they could before, and that opens up overs, corners, dig routes in behind them that were taken away early in the season because Jared Cook was the primary focus of the defense. They were more than happy to let Traquan Smith beat them. They were more than happy to let Adam Troutman beat them because they knew that that wasn't the weapon that the Saints needed to get going. And I think as Michael Thomas gets more and more attention and gets worked more significantly into the game plan, that's only going to be a benefit for Jared Cook. But we'll see. I think he's going to have 5-6 catches, maybe 80 yards, and probably a touchdown. That would be my guess. But maybe he does go bananas like he did in the first quarter last year. We have a couple Let's Goes. We have a Who Dat from Chicago, David Holt. Thanks for joining us. They better not come out slow. I don't think they will. I think the slow starts are a thing of the past. And I mean, you talk about those slow starts. It's really the only time you saw slow starts was when they had no one on the offense. The slow start, quote unquote slow start against the Lions, that was a tipped interception that you really can't do anything about. The defensive tackle made a great play. The slow start against the Chargers, it's really the only one that you look at as, yeah, they should have been better. They just had trouble executing in that first half. Emmanuel Sanders had a hard time getting going, but it was more about just the weapons you didn't have on the field than the play itself. So I don't think that the slow starts are going to stick around. I think what you saw from the Bucs and what you saw against the Bears, I think is a better example of where this team stands to go. To improve your championship team. Yeah, I agree with this. Ron Brown points out, this is the game that if you want to say you're a Super Bowl contender, if you proved last week that you're a Super Bowl contender. If you want to prove that you are a team that people should take seriously and really kind of feel confident about, this is the game that you don't allow to be close. This is a game that you take over early and hold on to late, just like you did against the Bucs. I mean, there's no reason this game should get into the fourth quarter with any scoreboard pressure at all. But let's see, we got one more. Do you think the D-line gets pressure on the San Francisco QB? How's the line for San Francisco? It's tough. They have so many moving parts that I can't even give you a reasonable projection. Nick Mullins is pretty good at moving in the pocket, and he's going to be able to make up for a little bit of the disparity between the offensive line having any continuity at all versus the Saints getting pressure. They will pressure the quarterback. They will. The thing about this game is you're going to go into it knowing that the 49ers are going to have a hard time establishing the run with Jerick McKinnon and JaMychal Hasty as their top running backs, as their only running backs, really. So you're probably going to be a little more. Trying to think of the word, conservative in terms of the rush you try to develop upfield. I think you're going to see them try to contain Mullins around the edges. I don't think they're going to run that NASCAR package the way they did because he's going to want to check it down a lot more to the edges of the field. So you don't want to get sucked up too far upfield and allow the screens and the dump off passes that they're going to have to go with because that's the only way their offense can operate. To just get out with blockers in front. And if you try to just pin your ears back and go toward the quarterback constantly, they're going to catch you on a few of those. And that's really going to be the only way I expect the 49ers to be able to move the ball consistently. So it's tough. I think they could, if they wanted to, really pin their ears back and run those NASCAR packages out there and just blow up the pocket on Nick Mullins. But I think that the 49ers are going to be playing for that. So I really think you're going to see a lot more contain type rush technique around the edges in this game than you did last week, knowing that Tom Brady wasn't going to be mobile and be able to extend plays. If you crash the pocket or if you collapse the pocket from the interior against Tom Brady, the play is over. The play's over. He might navigate the pocket and get the ball off, but for all intents and purposes, the ball's either coming out or he's going down. It's one or the other. But from this perspective, if you allow Nick Mullins to get outside the pocket, he probably has a better chance of creating a broken play, creating out of a broken play than he would creating out of the pocket because he's Nick Mullins. No offense to Nick Mullins. He's a fine backup and he's really good about resetting the pylons and they get knocked down. But, if you allow Nick Mullins to do what he's going to want to do in terms of creating opportunities through screen passes and checkdowns, then that's on you. That's on the scheme. So we'll see. Let's go through score predictions a little bit. I got 34-21 Saints from Matt. I got 45-13 from Ian. I got 42-17 from Amaziah. I think I said that correctly, but I apologize if not. And I believe that's it. Yeah, I think these are some fair score predictions. I put out a 6-pack. I call it a 6-pack predictions before every game. And one of my predictions today is the Saints go over 40 points. It's tough to say how many points the 49ers will score because when you get into garbage time, it really becomes difficult to project how many points you can put on Drew Brees how many points you can put on the Saints when they're just running out the clock. But I'm going to say 44-17. I'll give them 17. I think they pull enough out. But that's my main prediction is Saints over 40. I think you're going to see Michael Thomas get 10 plus catches. I think you're going to see let's go from the 49ers. I think you're going to see Jerick McKinnon lead the Vikings. Oh, it's the Vikings. What the hell's wrong with me? He hasn't played for the Vikings in 2 seasons. I think you're going to see Jerick McKinnon lead the 49ers in receptions. I think you're going to see Nick Mullins reset at least one pylon. And I think Jameis Winston gets into this game in the fourth quarter. Back-to-back games with Jameis Winston, and it is partially because I'm looking at him right there on the screen. But let's see if there's any more comments. Just a couple who-dats. I'll give you a who-dat from Amorian Stovall to close this out. Again, my name is Jeff Nowak, digital sports producer for NOLA.com. Oh, we have one more, 42-21 from Matthew Quave. Didn't want to miss that. I think that's a good number. But again, Jeff Nowak, NOLA.com, digital sports producer. Follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. I'll show it to you right here. I tweet a bunch of Saints stuff, so if you're into that sort of thing, check it out. Hit the follow button. If you want to check out any more of our content, go head over to NOLA.com, more specifically, and I'll type it in for you, NOLA.com/sports/Saints. And it'll bring you to this nice page where we have all the content that you could ever possibly want. We got about 15 minutes before kickoff. Head on over here and make sure you're up on the action, got the inactives and all that going on. And otherwise, let's see what happens. Thanks for tuning in. Peace, y'all.